Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening. We are going to be starting our webinar, the second episode of this series called Elevating Your Patient's Experience with Dr. Vishan Patel. My name is Robiha. I am your host. I work with Pearl. I am their customer success manager and a dental hygienist. We're going to cover the topics of how you can improve your patient communication and education, how you can provide more satisfaction and increase more accurate diagnosis and personalized experience for your patients, and how you'll be able to use Pearl's advanced tools for treatment planning. So I'm going to pass on to Dr. Vishan to introduce himself.
Yeah, so hi everyone, my name is Dr. Vishan. I'm a dentist working in a mainly private 7-surgery practice in West London. I've been working here for around 4 years now at the Bush Dental Clinic since graduating from Bristol University. Our practice provides a vast range of specialist dental services all under one roof. And now our love of kind of gadgets and things and constantly investing in the latest technology gives us the ability to offer the very best for our patients. As soon as I saw Pearl, I was instantly drawn to it, and the idea you can take a simple black and white X-ray and flick it and switch it into color was a huge draw. I've been able to find that when you show a patient an X-ray and not having to explain all the different types of gradients of grey, a huge time saver, and this has also improved on patient communication. It's a game changer to use Pearl to explain how we see an X-ray as a dentist. So to begin, what we're going to do is we're going to play a little game where we've got 3 different types of X-rays, and you're going to just have a little look and see if you can spot any caries, radiolucencies, calculus, and then you'll try and play against AI and see how well you come out. So I'm gonna give this a little go. So if you just scan the little QR code, you'll be able to play along essentially. So I'll give you guys maybe around 5 minutes or so to do this, and then we'll take it from there.
You get a smaller number out of 100. 31 is my score, and I've ranked 3,118. And it's out of, I think, about 5,000. So, yeah, I've done very poorly, but never mind. That's just evident that our eyes alone can't pick up on everything. So that's
exactly
how I see it. But yeah, that was fun.
So,
I hope you guys enjoyed that.
all right, so I'm going to now go through a real life scenario which I had on this new patient. So you can see Pearl live in action essentially. So on this patient, like normal, I would have charted the teeth, I would have taken intraoral photos, and I'd also taken bite wings. After the X-rays had been developed, I'd normally go over them myself, diagnosing any areas of decay, calculus, bone levels, etc. Now, at this point, I then switched to Pearl as a second opinion. So I'm going to give you guys just a quick 30 seconds to just see what you would do for this patient looking at this X-ray. And then I can talk to you about what I did. There were 3 cavities as a clue. Okay. All right, so essentially most of you, I would have hoped, spotted the caries in the upper right 4-5 region, and we can see these radiolucencies. For the small majority, you could see there's an enamel lesion on the lower right 5. And now essentially what I'm going to do is I'm going to just switch it to Pearl. We can see what Pearl thought. So here you can see it's correctly diagnosed that you've got upper right 4-5 caries. It's also said that there's an enamel lesion, but did anyone spot the lower right 6 mesial decay? So on this Pearl view, it's obviously brought my attention to this lower right 6 area. And being honest, I didn't actually diagnose this as caries when I first saw the patient. I would have left it as probably an enamel lesion, and I would have treated it through OHI, hygienist, fluoride varnish. Now, because I had Pearl, it's given me a second opinion. I've had a look at this lower right six. I've then gone back into the mouth and I've just seen a little shadow, as you can see here. So on this photo that I've taken, you can see a little bit of a shadow. And I went with Pearl and my own obvious opinion. And as you can see from the workflow, there was definite decay into dentine, which we then cleared up. We then sealed and then we rebuilt the whole tooth. So Pearl really made me recheck what I initially diagnosed, and using Pearl, we came to the right diagnosis. We were able to save a patient a bigger filling later on in the line. And this patient was actually very relieved to find out that we were able to use Pearl's technology to help find this decay and deal with it as minimal as possible, really. So yeah, it's a great example of how we could use Pearl.
Vishan, can I ask,
Yeah.
how were you so sure that the AI detections were accurate? Did you use any other tools or just a
So, I
judge?
mean, I've got a little a light which can help me as well. And I've also got a Diagnodent, so it can also basically test the density within a tooth. You literally just put it on the tooth and it will peep and it will give you a scoring. And if it finds there's kind of a little area there, it will just peep a little louder, basically. So I use that as well. That alongside just looking at it clinically, you could just see a little shadow there. I then went with Pearl and my own kind of knowledge to go ahead and do the filling, really.
Thank you.
Yeah. Cool. So next, what we've got is essentially we've got Pearl's view basically, and Pearl doesn't only just pick up kind of decay, it also picks up a number of things. So first, when I'm speaking to a patient, I normally show them in traditional black and white. I then switch to color, and this is where normally patients are wowed at how clear they can now read an X-ray, whereas normally they're squinting at the X-ray trying to see what you're basically telling them. I'd explain what each of the colors mean. So you've got the white enamel, you've got green dentine, you've got the nerves, you've got the roots, you've got your bone levels, etc. Before then, I would move on to little things. So normally with a patient in this situation, I went over the enamel lesion and I talk about how we don't actually need to do a filling here. We can do things like OHI, hygienist, fluoride treatment to try and prevent you needing a filling in the future. At this point, when you're kind of talking about enamel lesions and showing them on the X-ray with Pearl, they can see the color, but they're also normally thinking about, okay, so what's the bigger red, basically? And on some occasions, I've even had patients who self-diagnose themselves that they have caries. So they'll normally say, does that mean I need to have fillings on these teeth with the bigger pink? At that point, most of your job is completely done. You then just agree with the patient and you say, yes, because you've got decay, which has gone through the enamel and now is in the dentine, this is a clear reason why we would need to do a filling to prevent it from getting worse. When you can see a radiolucency, which is in the dentine, dentine is a lot softer, so the decay will travel a lot faster kind of rate, basically. We're also able to see these little green squares, and that brings the patient's eyes to these areas, and you can then talk about the calculus. So you can see these little fragments, and that again, patients find it a lot easier to see. Another of my kind of favorite things about Pearl is the measurement function, which indicates the distance between the CEJ and the bone. This can not only aid the dentist, but it can also help the hygienist, periodontist when reviewing a patient's history over time. Now, Pearl's ability to put an exact number on something and then apply it to the X-ray for patients to see for themselves is extremely powerful. It's a great way of showing a patient they've got decay, they've got they're losing bone, or everything's being stable essentially. Now, I know I've been raving on about how good Pearl is, but we all must remember that we are the clinicians and Pearl should only really be used as a second opinion. It's there to point you in the right direction, but it's up to you to diagnose and then also then treatment plan the patient. If you do disagree with anything with Pearl, it's quite clever because we've got a little sidebar on the right and this little pencil function you can simply, so if you didn't think that was decay, you can literally click the pencil and you would delete the decay wherever you saw fit, essentially. Same as if you think there was calculus in the top right area, you could add calculus in. So Pearl does give you the options to be able to edit what it also thinks. What it also does is there is a number of different kind of functions which Pearl gives. So you can turn the brightness up, you can put invert mode, you can adjust the measurements, etc., to really help you when diagnosing. Pearl is constantly kind of updating the system as well to make things better. And since I joined in May, they've now released the compare mode, which I'll also talk about later. That's this A and B bit here. Here we go. So let's move on to the next slide. Good. So what happens if a patient still says no? If on the rare occasion a patient doesn't book in for treatment, even after you've gone over and explained everything, normally what happens in our practice is we give a patient normally around a month before we use Pearl to send a copy of the illustrated x-rays to the patient. This is outlined and explained in a key, so it's very clear for the patient to use the key to kind of diagnose themselves again and also relay the information given to them at the checkup really easily. It also gives the date in the top left, and you can also put your practice name in the top right. Now, this document can be used to show that you yourself as a dentist has also gone over and provided the relevant information to a patient. If a patient, for example, comes back needing root treatments after not proceeding with treatment, you can clearly show that you've gone and done everything to educate why the patient needs kind of treatment in the first place. This is really important in patients who feel they don't have any symptoms, but they don't believe that they have any decay, or if you can't see a big hole, then there's nothing to do really. So it's really important to give the patient the information so they can see for themselves. And I find this is a lot better than sending just individual x-rays where a patient isn't going to see anything, I feel. So it's a great tool that they've just come out with.
Vishan,
Yeah,
I like
yes.
questions. So with that compare mode and you sending it out to them, are you sending it out a month later, or you're also giving it to them once they've had
I'm not giving it to them in the actual checkup appointment. I'm giving it to them, yeah. So a month later, because essentially the checkup, I would have just spoken to them. I've told them the treatment plan, etc. And then it's only a month later I'd follow up by sending one of these in kind of an email format, really.
Okay. And so when you do that, do you find that patients are actually calling back, or when you get in touch with them that they're taking up treatment?
Yes, I mean, a lot of the time, patients, they're obviously with costs and things like that. I mean, patients are taking the time, but they're really grateful to be able to kind of be given these and for them to see for themselves, okay, let's deal. I mean, in this situation, the patient may say, right, let's just deal with the top right filling because I can see they're a lot bigger. And then maybe could we do the lower right a little later, essentially. So it gives the patient a bit more power over what is actually happening with decay, because normally a patient only knows, right, they've got decay in one tooth. They don't really, it's either big or small, but in this aspect, they can clearly see for themselves and make that judgment for themselves as well, really.
And then I have one more question, just because I'm interested in your workflow. Who does the follow-ups in a month's time? Is that you yourself, or do you have a TCO?
I'll task myself because I like to just be consistent with my patients, essentially. So I'll write them a little email. And then if a patient still doesn't come back after that month, I think the 2-3 months, that's when practice manager will just follow up on that really.
Thank you.
Yeah, sure. So the next slide is essentially the compare icon. So like I talked about previously, this is a prime example of how I've used the compare tool essentially to enhance a patient's understanding. So in this situation, I saw a patient back in May 2023 where we diagnosed upper left 5 and upper left 6 for mesial decay. The patient unfortunately chose not to proceed with treatment as he wasn't feeling any symptoms, and his exact words were he couldn't see a big hole in his mouth, so he decided to leave it. We can now, because I've now got Pearl, I can use basically the compare tool to put two x-rays side by side together to show the difference essentially. Now in this situation, a patient can then see whether their condition is worsening or on the flip side has not progressed. Now in this situation though, we can see in May 2023, you could see that the decay had got into dentine around 15%. And then fast forward that back to September 2024, patient came back, we took a couple more x-rays and we could see that that had actually increased to 26%. Now, in my experience, I've now seen a lot more uptake with these types of patients who prefer normally to kind of leave decay because they're not getting any symptoms. It also gives a patient realization that things are worsening. And as you can see in this x-ray, he's got a lot of enamel lesions. These could all turn into fillings if he's not careful, if he's not seeing hygiene, he's not cleaning in between his teeth. So it does definitely give a patient kind of a boost to start cleaning his teeth a little bit better, really. Luckily, because of this, the patient is actually booked in for treatment next week, so that's great. So yeah, so it's a great tool really to just see before and after, because I think normally exactly we're kind of with black and white x-rays, you won't really see a huge difference unless there's a big amount of decay a year later, basically. So being able to show this to a patient who doesn't really believe what they're seeing on an x-ray is really good, really.
And I guess that those incipient caries, those light pink coloured
Yeah,
detections are also then prompting them to book their hygiene appointments more regularly then.
exactly, like hygiene appointments, to get some fluoride mouthwash, to start TPing, brushing themselves, because they know that these things could turn at kind of any point, really. So yeah, that's why the colour it's great for a patient to see.
What's your patient's feedback on those?
On
Just seeing
on
these detections and
I
reinforcing.
mean, as soon as you, because I always go through the X-rays in black and white, and then as soon as I kind of switch the Pearl view and everything comes up in color, the patients are kind of wowed by it. They're really impressed that they can actually see it. And normally I would have explained everything previously, so they'll be able to make their own kind of conclusions in their head, and they're actually kind of curious as to what things mean. And I've also had patients come back and they've said, has it got worse or has it got better? I've been hygienist, I'm doing it before I varnish, so they get a little bit more involved in kind of looking at their x-rays rather than just leaving you to it and then seeing what you've got to say, really.
Do any of your patients ask for the printouts themselves?
No, I haven't had anyone ask for the printer. I just send a printout. I mean, even I had a patient actually who they moved locations. I think they've gone to Southampton or something. So they moved away from the practice. And then we sent the x-rays because she had a checkup or something. And we sent the Pearl x-rays and the dentist actually thought, oh wow, what was this basically? And then the patient actually explained it to the dentist, which was quite cool because she messaged me really.
Yeah.
So yeah, that was one thing that happened really.
Good.
Cool. So moving on. So essentially, this is the impact so far. These are the stats that I've managed to kind of find out as looking kind of from a practice-based view. Using the exact software, I was able to use and find out whether Pearl really had kind of made a difference to the revenue in the practice. As you can see, the percentage increase on the right-hand side for each of the titles has gone up significantly. Not only was our practice seeing a greater uptake of treatment, but has also increased the number of fillings we were undertaking. The fluoride mouthwash stat is really astonishing, really. We never really pushed fluoride mouthwash, and as soon as we all the enamel lesions became visual to our patients, they were suddenly a little bit more inclined to go with the fluoride mouthwash, and that's what you can see here. So you've gone from 11 to 169, which is crazy, especially over only 2 months, really. I feel Pearl has really improved the patient's understanding and experience at our dental practice, and that's what you can kind of see in this table. I feel also Pearl has strengthened the patient's trust they have in you as a dentist, as they are able to see a second opinion on their x-rays immediately, and then put 2 and 2 together to make their decision, essentially. So yeah, it was good, because you obviously want to make use out of Pearl, especially if you're paying for it per month. Essentially, you want to be seeing the value you get in your practice, basically.
Are you able to see that your patient's IQ has started to change across the practice? Like, since you've started using Pearl, have your patients started to be more understanding of the treatment plans that you're offering?
Yeah, I mean, as soon as you, I mean, it is just the color aspect. I think it's as soon as they see that, they can tell that they need treatment, or they plan a way around doing the treatment over time, basically. It's just a clear way of showing things rather than just in the black and white and having a look that way, really. So yeah, patients, they are a little bit more involved these days as well, which is good. And everyone wants to prevent. That's what we kind of do in our practice. You'd rather do preventable dentistry rather than reactive dentistry. And I think patients really appreciate that as well. They see that you're investing in the best technology, kind of with Pearl, and they don't want fillings at the end of the day. So they're keen to resolve any issues.
So you've obviously seen a patient more than once using Pearl. And so have you found that it's also cut down the amount of time that you're spending having to explain things? Your treatment time is kind of reduced, or?
Yeah, so normally I would have spent kind of time basically drawing out images, basically. So I would have normally talked about, I think I've actually got a picture here. There we go, there's my picture. That I would have normally drawn to a patient while their x-rays were coming in and before I show their x-rays to them. So you can see the bone, you can see the decay, you can see calculus, you can see the nerves. But now with Pearl, because it's kind of all there, I've saved this amount of time. So I can use this time to either further educate my patients or simply just gain more rapport. As good as it is, we always must remember that it's a second opinion. But yeah, it's a great tool to be able to use now to my patients, really.
And so with the question I've just asked, I've got another question to add to that. Have you had to add extra time to that initial first appointment so that you're able to incorporate Pearl into your workflow?
No. So I've saved time. So I used to have to draw this diagram out for each of my patients, but now just with Pearl, and then I guess the first time you explain a patient Pearl, you might need a little bit longer to kind of explain the colors, etc. But then that second, third, fourth appointment, a patient is looking and they're instantly looking at all the colors, so they know what to kind of look out for, basically. Yeah, they don't want anything into dentine. That's one of my patients says. As long as it's into the enamel, it's okay. So educating a patient like that and getting them involved in making decisions together is quite important, basically. And that's helped with the uptake of patients as well, really.
I don't think we know as clinicians or as practices whether a patient's gone elsewhere for a second opinion. But have you found that anyone has ever done that at your
I
practice? Or
mean, being in kind of West London, there's probably around, I don't know, 10, 15 practices all within our radius essentially. So patients will always kind of they'll try shop around or they'll try find the best practice until they've kind of suited. We're lucky where our practice has been around for around 32 years. So our patient base is kind of just through recommendations, etc. But new patients, they will be kind of skeptical as to what you would normally be telling them. But with Pearl, because it kind of gives you an instant second opinion, I feel patients are a lot more kind of relaxed about your treatment plan, and as you've kind of got a backup, and Pearl is essentially backing you up. Whereas for a patient, it's nice to see that you've got this technology which has just said exactly what you've told them. So yeah, that's how I've used that really.
and with 15 other practices around you, I guess Pearl is helping to retain your patient base.
Yeah. I mean, it's great tech, and every patient that we have, they love how we invest in the latest technology. I mean, we've got Cerec machine, iTero, we've got all the scanners, all this type of stuff. So they love it. Whenever we've got a new kind of gadget, they're always at the forefront of, okay, what's this? What does it do? And they want to kind of use it essentially. So they're happy that we're still investing to just create the best treatment possible, really.
How many clinicians do you have at your practice, and are all of them using it?
Yeah, so every clinician is using it, and there's 7 dentists now in our practice. Each of them actually have all. So obviously, as kind of being a practice owner, you need to talk about costs, etc. But each of them have all individually kind of increased their own turnover since Pearl. So that's a great help as well, really.
Yeah.
It's allowed patients to have a bit more understanding, which I feel has led them to go ahead with a lot more treatment, and then that's helped the practice overall. So yeah, so not only the practice has benefited, but I feel it's also kind of improved the patient's experience when it comes to kind of looking at X-rays and seeing what things they need really.
Do you have hygienists and therapists at the practice?
We've got 3 hygienists as well.
Are they
So
able to?
yeah, so essentially for especially for new patients who come in and they've got kind of, if they've got calculus everywhere, etc., it's a good tool for them to go over these areas so they can spot where they need to be cleaning, etc. But yeah, normally they'll make their own diagnosis and then they can use Pearl as kind of a backup tool as well, really.
Yes, and with the new feature now where we've got edit measurements in the
Mm.
toolbar, you're able to change those bone levels yourself. So if you did ever find that it wasn't what you were hoping for it to be, it's not reading it to where it should be.
Yeah.
That's the new features on there now.
Yeah. I mean, the fact that you can edit everything probably in Pearl is a good thing, because if you don't agree with it, um, it is AI and it's obviously constantly learning. So you need to make sure that you're not just taking its word for everything. You're also using your own kind of knowledge and then putting 2 to 2 together, really.
Yeah, I think that's a really important point you've just made there, that AI isn't 100% accurate. And even if it was, then we should always remember that we are the expert. As clinicians, it's our responsibility to make sure that we are diagnosing and treating correctly. So those tools on the side there are really useful to be able to do that, to edit off or add on things so that you can then show
Yeah.
the patient the correct diagnosis detections. And I was going to also ask, do you have TCOs at your practice?
No TCOs. So the dentist will normally follow up with their own patients, and then we've also got practice manager, reception staff will help a little bit as well, really.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, I wondered if you had to like convince your team to use AI in the practice, but I guess not so much because everyone's using it.
no, they have to use it. Then it's non-negotiable not to use it essentially. So I have checked with all the dentists. Are you using Pearl? How are you using it? How are you finding it? Obviously, when we first started, and obviously in a practice, it does take time to if dentists, if they don't use something, then it'll just be pushed away and no one will ever use it essentially. So getting them on board was fairly easy really once they'd seen kind of what it does, and then also showing it to a patient and seeing the uptake of treatment. It's like, why would you not use it essentially?
Yeah. I often tell when I'm training clinicians and practices, I often say that this is a patient education tool and a treatment conversion tool. So it's really important that you have this open with every patient and that you're getting your patients on board with it, because it will, in the long run, cut your talking time with your patient. You're not having to explain things as much because they're the ones now engaging in the conversation and asking you the questions, so when are we doing this treatment, and what could happen if I
Yeah,
don't? Yeah.
yeah, exactly. I mean, like in the case that I said previously, um, they could see that the decay had just grown, and hence he was, yeah, okay, right, we definitely need to do this filling now.
Yeah.
There were no ifs or buts, so he could see the kind of the facts, and then that's what we then did really.
Have you
Um,
found that your patients are more engaged in conversation with using AI now, or are they similar
I
to what
mean,
they?
it's like when we learned about using X-rays kind of at university, it took me ages just looking at black and white. I literally had no idea. But obviously, as you're a dentist, you look at more and more X-rays, and your eyes become tuned in. Whereas a patient, they're seeing these X-rays once every year, every 2 years, essentially. Um, so with Pearl, just being able to adding color to anything helps. And then on X-rays in this situation, it allows them to engage. Um, they're more kind of inclined as to what's this, what's that, what's this new color, etc. Rather than squinting and having a look at a black and white X-ray that they have no idea what they're looking at really.
Mm. Well, it's really
Yeah.
interesting how you guys have adopted it into your practice, and the benefits you're obviously seeing there from the ROI and your fluoride mouthwash. I love that.
Yeah, you gotta check all these things. And yeah, it's good how it has improved. I mean, I'm not sure what the date's like, okay, but we started in around May, June with Pearl, and then obviously we've carried on. And yeah, I just remember a few weeks back, we were just ordering more and more fluoride mouthwash to keep up with the demand, because we didn't have that much in stock really. Yeah, stock lady likes us essentially.
Next time we meet, I'd really like to know what your floss uptake has been, or your
Oh, yes,
intermittent
I have.
brushing. Yeah, that would be good.
Yeah, I think, yeah, we'll see. I think TP brush is probably a little bit more, but I'm not sure about floss yet.
I know that you're a restorative dentist, and therefore your eye will always go to your ROI for caries. But did you also do
Yeah.
a breakdown of any other treatments as your endo, perio, anything else?
I think perio long term will be beneficial. I think at the moment because Pearl backdates it 1 year, so you've got that whole year. But I think going into kind of a 2, 3 year where you can really see a patient's kind of progress through perio or things getting worse, that'll be interesting to see. In terms of root treatments, um, it's interesting to see the radiolucency. So that comes up, so you can see the periapical radiolucency in kind of a light blue. And sometimes when you're looking at an X-ray and you're telling a patient, look, it looks a little dark around kind of the apex, because again, it puts it into color. That helps a patient understand, okay, look, I've got an infection. I need to ideally do root treatment. So yeah, so that helps. I think for root treatment, it's helped. For perio, maybe a bit more long term. Um, but I think the clearance, just the fillings really. Um, yeah, it brings your eye to um, these little areas, and then patients are kind of happy to go ahead with it really.
Yeah. I was in a meeting today and I've seen some of the new additions that are going to be coming out, so I'm very excited. Obviously, I can't talk about them right now, but yeah, keep an eye out. There's some really cool things being added on.
Oh, nice. Yeah, I did. Because, yeah, you can make suggestions as well, can't you?
Yes,
So,
they're
yeah,
going to help
I think I've
centers.
been adding it. But it's good. I mean, because it's constantly updating, it's nice to see it being updated and constantly getting better.
I think one of the
Um,
best things about this company, I've been with them 2 years, is that they listen to the client. So when you've made a suggestion, they actually take that on board and you'll find that it gets added to the software. Of course, it takes time to do these things, so a little bit of patience, but there are things coming that I know we've spoken about months ago or even over a year ago, and now it's actually coming to life. So it's very exciting.
yeah, that's good. It's good to hear it.
So I'll open up to the audience. If you have any questions, please pop them in the Q&A section and we will get those answered for you. And we also have a QR code for demo. So one is behind me over here, and you should have one here on a slide in just a moment. We've had one which I feel we may have already answered, so we'll just ask it. Do you find that your patients are more engaged with the treatments and are more confident with their treatment plans?
Yes. Basically, yes. I mean, after showing the patient an X-ray, I'll always go through it in black and white with them first, and then I'll switch to the color with Pearl and going over that explanation really and getting the patient involved into seeing why they've got decay. It's got into the dentine. Can you see here? Has really helped. And if you can get a patient to understand what you're saying, like kind of 9 times out of 10, they will go with what you're saying essentially. So with Pearl, that just adds more fuel to kind of your knowledge already, really.
Yeah, it's comprehension over everything, which then just adds to your rapport building with that patient.
Yeah,
And that
exactly.
then just, that's the patient for life, really. I know the younger generation are a little bit different, but yeah.
No, just yeah, true.
Um, okay, so we've had a question saying, can we see the first X-ray again without Pearl, please? Did we have? Yes, you did on the first slide.
Yeah, that's this one.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, when you're looking at it again, you can probably see a little darkness here. I think adjusting the contrast, etc., will make it a little easier. But yeah, that was that tooth, which obviously had decay. Looking at kind of the workflow, really. Um, so yeah, and then next. So that was obviously the workflow with the Pearl X-ray there as well. So it was great. I mean, it brought my eye to it, and then we did the film.
Do you think you would have missed that without having used Pearl? Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I would have just said it was an enamel lesion. So I would have just done my fluoride varnish, um, OHI, and hygienist, and then we would have reassessed it in 6 to 12 months, and then rechecked on an X-ray, and then seeing if anything had got bigger. If it hadn't, then we probably would have left it again and may have only known until it actually got really big.
I was catching up with a implant surgeon a couple of days ago, and he's also using Pearl at their practice, and he said he can't believe how many lesions he's missed. So looking at the X-ray and then putting Pearl on, he was just like, I never saw those. And then when he actually checked them, he's starting to notice that he was missing a few things, and he was very open about it and very
Yeah. It
happy.
is crazy when you do look back, because you've got a year back as well, backdated, and those patients who are coming who potentially saw, I don't know, February, March, April time before kind of we started Pearl, you see them back, and then you can see kind of areas which Pearl has picked up, and then you have to then make your own diagnosis really.
That compare mode is going to be really useful for that reason.
Yeah,
Your
yeah. 100%.
day to your X-ray last year, has disease progressed or has something improved?
I mean, I think it's really helpful when because Pearl puts kind of a number on these kind of
So,
lesions, which are, you could say it's an enamel lesion, or you could say it's just interdentine. Because it puts a number on it, you can automatically say, right, it's 19. I think this was actually 20% interdentine for this case. But you can tell a patient it's 20% interdentine, and you give the patient the kind of the power to say, right, do you want to go for a filling, or do we want to wait? And then do we want to see if this number increases or stays the same?
we've had another question.
Oh, yeah.
What fluoride mouthwash are you recommending?
I recommend it. It's a brand called Kin
Oh, yeah.
Fluoride Mouthwash. They came in, we thought we tested it out, and I kind of liked it. It's just minty and it's really good, and all our kind of patients love it really now. You can only also buy it from a dental practice, which we find is good, rather than telling a patient to go buy it elsewhere.
Yeah.
Every little bit of revenue helps. Well,
I think it's an Irish company, isn't it? If I remember correctly from my rep.
no, I believe it's Spanish. It's a
Oh,
Spanish,
is
but
it?
it's a big brand, but it's Spain, but they're bringing it over here.
Okay. Well, we've had another question. How do you access the compare mode? So I know you had a slide to show where it
Yeah.
was.
Here we go. So on this X-ray, we can only see one X-ray, but you just press this A and B button. As soon as you press that, normally on a patient's kind of X-rays, if you've seen them kind of a year ago, you'll have another tab here which has, say, July 2023. So you can flick between them that way. Or if you press the A and B button, you can simply just click on any X-ray you want side by side, and then that'll give you the compare mode.
So those X-rays don't necessarily need to be a year apart. Any X-rays.
No,
So you'll
they
get a
could be
row
any
of
X-rays.
dates, and you'll be able to.
Exactly. Yeah, so normally you can just have the left and right bite wing, or just to see a whole mouth if they wanted as well.
So we have another question. How often does Pearl present a finding which you don't agree with?
So I've found it depends on the quality of your X-rays really. I mean, I do find Pearl is really good, but those times where if the patient's got crowding, or if the patients have got overlapping teeth, Pearl will sometimes kind of do it as a false positive, and it'll say that it's decay there. Then you've just got to know that, and you've got to delete it or edit it essentially. But on X-rays like this, where you've got kind of very clear teeth, I haven't had any issues with teeth like this. It's only those, maybe the canines, that I've seen. It's added decay where there's clearly not decay basically. But that's only a few times really. But that just highlights the point that yeah, you do need to obviously be diagnosing yourself, and you're using Pearl to educate the patient and also for your own kind of knowledge really as well.
Vishan, would you just quickly go over the sensitivity bar?
Yeah,
So,
sure.
so just
So yeah,
here.
as you can see, kind of on the top right area, this is the sensitivity bar. So you've got low, medium, high, and then you've got human, but you can essentially change this. So low detection is low detection everything, and then high.
I'll go over it.
I always
So,
just need it on medium, to be honest.
so it's
But yeah,
defaulted. And then if you find that you are seeing false negatives or positives, it's because the sensitivity bar has gone up to low. So it's a little bit of a control on the AI. So when you're at human, there's no detections apart from measurements, which you have to click off on the toolbar. High is when we have restrained the AI and it only picks up a certain number of detections. Medium is where
It'll pick
we,
up.
yeah, we believe it to pick
Yeah.
up the right amount of detections. And then low is where we've kind of let it loose and gone, show everything.
So it is sometimes good to use that low as well, so you can see what it thinks basically, and then you can always track back to the medium or high if you really want. Um, but yeah, there's an array of tools. So when I first got it, I was just messing around with all the tools, seeing what everything does, and playing around with it. But then as soon as you've got it, it's honestly the most helpful kind of tool really when showing a patient an X-ray.
Would you mind, Vishan, just hovering over some of these tools for us so I can just point out what they are? So like your top one is your full screen. The
Yeah.
second one down is a reset button. So if you've zoomed in anywhere, then it allows you to quickly go back to the original size. Your third button is a ruler, so especially useful for endodontists, and we've had great feedback in terms of the measurements being accurate. Fourth one is your edit tool, so allows you to delete or add on things. The fifth one is your edit measurements. So this one will allow those white lines. They are usually white up until 2.5, yellow from 2.5 to 4 millimeters, and then orange from 4 millimeters and above. You can change this in your settings in increments of 1 millimeter. We then have measurements, which I was just talking about. That's confused
Yeah.
me. Yeah, measurements that you can switch on and off. And then tooth parts, which is what Vishan's got switched on here. We've got brightness and contrast below that. So the images are calibrated to the same standard as your own imaging software. But if ever you needed to have a little play around, you have the option to do so. We have another zoom button, sorry. And then below that is your invert button. We have a Pearl Enhanced View button that brings sharpness or clarity to your X-ray. So if ever they were quite blurry or very grainy, you'd need to play around with that. But we can go into more detail in a demo with you. Then we've got a rotate button and a flip horizontally button.
I
Okay.
find the Zoom actually quite helpful because we use Examine Pro, but you just right click and you can zoom just one increment, but you can't go all the way. So with this, you literally just scroll and you can zoom straight into the tooth.
Yeah.
That's good when you just kind of want to talk to the patient about one little bit, really.
Yeah, I really like this. Okay. Any more questions?
Mhm.
I know the football's on tonight, so
In 9
maybe I shouldn't
minutes.
have said that. It'll drop off. Okay, Vishan, thank you so much for joining me. That was really interesting. I love the workflow that you're using, your patient journey. It's been very interesting, and I'm so glad that you're enjoying the tool. I would love to hear more about it at our next catch up. One more question. How do you
Yeah.
create a doc? Okay. So
How do you create that?
how do you create a PDF document? So it's the printout button. So on this screen, if you look to the top right, you've got this blue printout button. Printout is actually a PDF document, which allows you to then choose the x-rays that you want on that document, also the pathologies you want to add to that document, and you can switch on tooth parts and measurements on there. And that's
Yeah.
how it, so you can actually have it without the tooth parts on there as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
you can send normal X-rays, you can send them with color, you can change anything really.
Probably stay on for a few more minutes in case there's any more questions, but I want to thank you again, Vishan, and wish everyone a lovely evening. Take care.